Welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with specialists from around the world. I'm your host for today, Mark Walsh. So on the show today, Annabelle Apsion. So Annabelle is a Rosen Method teacher. She's also an actress who's been in some well-known stuff. And she's been giving me Rosen Method for a while now, which I really appreciate as a gentle, restorative form of bodywork. She'll tell us more about it. But Annabelle, welcome.
Thank you. How lovely to be here in this very unique time in history.
It certainly is, and we should date this because things are changing pretty quickly. It's currently the 24th of March. It's the first day of the British lockdown, and bodyworkers have been quite impacted by this. So maybe this is one of the things we can talk about. And before we get into that, though, normally I'm sort of face down on a table, so it's nice to see you on our Zoom screen. Normally when we hang out, I'm topless and face down and can't see you. So this is quite pleasant. But let's find out a bit more about you. So you tell us about your life and your relationship to the body, particularly.
Well, I suppose I personally love being massaged, and I've always loved that. Because I was working as an actress, and I did a lot of quite athletic performances. I did a lot of television and a lot of theatre. And I suppose actors are encouraged to think of their body as their tool, and it's your job to keep your tool in the best condition. And so I had massages, whenever I would go abroad, a lot for work, I went abroad. And then I got to thinking, about the body. And I was thinking about attitudes to the human body and how judgmental people are of one another about the bodies, how much shame people feel around their body, how in different cultures it's okay to show your body, in other cultures it's not. And I thought, what would it be like to know another human being, somebody that I don't have any relationship with, maybe somebody that I would never speak to in the ordinary way, and how can I connect to that person through the body? So I was interested about that, and I saw that there was a weekend workshop for Rosen Method Bodywork, and I thought it was massage. So I thought, well, I happen to be free this weekend, I'll go along. And it sounded very airy-fairy to me. I think they called it touching the body, contacting feelings, freeing the spirit, something like that. And I thought, oh, this sounds very airy-fairy. I probably won't like this, but I was free that weekend. And I volunteered to be demonstrated on, because I thought selfishly, then I will get the best massage from the teacher. And I found it very annoying to begin with. It wasn't the type of touch I was used to. I like very deep body work. And I thought, I don't think much of this. And then I think the teacher started to make some comments on how I was feeling, what I was noticing. And I had this very different experience. And as I said, I've had lots of body work, done lots of things with acting. We do all kinds of exercises, lots of dance, different types of therapies, but I'd never experienced anything quite like this. So I just enjoyed it. And in Rosen, if you go to a workshop, which is what as a teacher I offer a lot, it's very important to give the work, not just to receive it. So when I see clients privately, obviously they're there and they're receiving the work. But if you go to a workshop, it's not about becoming a practitioner. It's about the impact on you when you touch another person in that way and how you learn to feel inwards. So I actually can't remember your question, Mark.
No, it's fine. I think we're building a bit of a sense of you, and maybe let's unpack some of those things. So let's start with the acting, then we'll come back to the Rosen Method for our main kind of area. We've had some other actors on, Rachel Blackman, Philip Shepherd, come from an acting background, another embodiment person. And it does seem like the body is deeply involved in a lot of acting. I mean, some schools seem to be more into it than others. I mean, maybe you could say a little bit about kind of acting and its relationship to the body, first of all, because I think that's an interesting area to a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I did a lot of work, kind of avant-garde, arty-farty theatre work, where we would really be thinking about the relationship of the actor to the space around them. Mm-hmm. And we would be exploring spatial awareness. And I think you do quite a lot of dance, don't you? Contact dance. And you know that thing where you feel the relationship between people. Mm-hmm. And I worked with Peter Greenway, who's an amazing film director. And one of the things I loved doing with him was that some of the shots were like paintings. So in a soap opera, like Coronation Street or something, it's normally about the dialogue and you're seeing people like talking to one another. It's not about them in relationship to their context, to their environment so much. So, for example, in a film, you might see somebody standing some distance from the tree, and it's really about that human being's relationship to nature. So I was always interested in that, and I enjoyed that. And I think with an actor, if you think about it, when an actor is acting a very sad scene, they can start to cry often. So what's happening? It's not really happening. It's not true. But they're using their imagination to such an extent that they are crying. And I don't think anyone can just click their fingers and make themselves cry. Yeah. A whole physiological and psychological process is going on. And lots of people now are very aware of the relationship between the mind and the body, that what you tell yourself can become true. And what we believe, sometimes we kind of create and we keep in stuck patterns. So I always knew that you can use your mind in a very powerful way. So another example is if I wanted to be very frightened in a scene, if I just alter my breath, and I'm just going to do that now, it might sound a bit freaky, but if I go... I can start to feel panic just by changing my breath. So again, the relationship between the breath and our emotions, I mean, even when I did just that, I felt like blind panic, and all you can think about is the panic. And I listened to your lovely ABC meditation, I think it was, that you did yesterday.
Yeah, I did one for the meditation on the YouTube channel for the virus and the kind of panic and fear people are experiencing and working with the breath, which for some people who aren't trained in embodiment arts is an entirely new thing. Now, for yoga teachers and dancers and actors, that might seem common sense, but it's not for everyone. Yeah, but I also like the way you pointed out, why do we not want to be overstimulated? It's because we make poorer decisions often. So I think as well, that's the lovely thing that I've loved about doing Rosen Bodywork, is it's about slowing down. And something that everybody has become aware of in the situation that we're in now is actually, on one level, many people were desperate to slow down. And this is like given us a pause where we can slow down, stop compulsively being busy and doing, buying, the next. Yeah. We're having to really slow down. And lots of people are getting so much from that. They're connecting with themselves in a different way. They're even connecting with their own home environment and who they live with. Right. I mean, I'm now local for this great pause, which I want to acknowledge. Not everyone has time now. Some people are now having to sort of work from home and look after a child, for example. But there's definitely a lot of people that have a little bit of time, and I'm normally running around the world. Instead, I'm local. I'm basically, my life is now lived between one shop, a park, and my house. Today I was going through all the sort of toiletries in my house, and I was sort of checking what we had, but I was also basically sort of spending more time in my environment, going, okay, let's neaten this up. And, I don't normally have time for that, just to have a little bit of space and to be much more in place than I'm used to. I think there's a lot of cleaning going on. Right. You think that's a psychological thing? Like I'm cleaning out my drawers, like a kind of some sort of displacement activity, trying to purify things?
Well, I think it's also often we don't have time for that. And there's something very satisfying about going through the corners and throwing away what we don't need anymore.
I just threw away a bunch of old little bits of shampoo and stuff from hotels from years ago. And okay, so this great pause that many of us are now being forced into, I wonder, this could have profound effects really on society, this kind of stopping.
I hope so. Yeah.
That's often how I experience my sessions with you. I'm running around super busy normally. I come crashing in, lie on the couch, and it's a pause often for me in my day. Like, okay, Mark, just stop. Maybe you could paint a picture about what happens in a Rosen Method session for people that have never experienced it.
Well, people lie on a massage table, like they do when they're going for a massage, and we ask people to undress to their underpants and then lie on the table, and we cover them with a blanket. And why we do that is because we're working on the skin, and it feels different. I mean, if you go for a massage, it's not normally through your clothes, it's on the skin. But if people feel self-conscious or perhaps feel vulnerable being undressed in that way, then they can wear loose, soft clothing. And sometimes people might start with that. And then as they get more comfortable, with the sessions there, they want to naturally, they think, oh, actually, I'd like to, just be in my underwear covered by the blanket. Women can leave their bras on or take them off, whatever it is. And the reason that we leave underpants on is because it's not a massage, so we're really working with the unconscious, and we really want people to feel safe. And that's kind of like a thing where it's your boundary, And then we work normally over the blanket first. And again, that's so that people can kind of get used to the touch, they can relax. And then we will pull the blanket down. I will have been observing things in my client that I notice in their face, in their breath, in the way their body feels, in terms of how they're presenting, the body language. And then when I take the blanket down, of course, I can see them even more. And often it's like you see another layer. The body is very expressive, and people's backs will change colour, for example, or their chests, they'll flush, they'll go white. People might get goose pimples, or you can feel the muscles relaxing even more. So we're kind of listening with our hands and observing. And as you know, we also talk with people. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I might say something that I notice in the client that I'm curious about, or that I'd like to bring their attention to and see what they notice. And then, it depends. People respond in different ways, So if you might have somebody who it's their first time, and you have to, I suppose, help somebody to start to feel safe enough to talk in the way that we do. Because I don't know if you could describe, you might be better at describing it, but it's not like a chat.
No, I experience it as gentle touch, sometimes almost like a subtle body work, particularly on the breath, a sort of encouragement to breathe more fully in a very gentle way. And then this dialogue, which is not chatty or fast, but it's, you might say, hey, Mark, I remember last time you said, I noticed there's not much pause between the in-breath and the out-breath. Or we might explore some emotion that's there, or something. There's just a little bit of body analysis, body conversation, body therapy almost, combined with a hands-on approach. And I like that mix of some sort of dialogue, like, something, because often I'll be getting body work and something really interesting is coming up, and that's just not part of their skill set to deal with it verbally. Whereas in this case, there's a certain amount of verbal interaction to make sense of things, and the direct touch, which I think is so helpful.
Yeah. And often, people, like I might ask something and the client doesn't have to reply, because it's really not about them necessarily telling me. Mm-hmm. But sometimes if I ask the question, the client will feel that question, and they'll feel their own answer. And sometimes adding words to things is very useful. We don't know what's going to come out. And sometimes people almost want to keep that feeling, with themselves. But I can feel there's a response. Even if they don't say something, I can feel them responding. And then I might, see where that leads us. And then they might say something later. Or I don't want to push them to answer. But I'm just offering it, and when they feel it's right. So a lot of it is developing this kind of, I think, timing that people really feel into. When is it right for something to be said? And I feel that as a practitioner, and I think people feel that as clients. And sometimes we have people coming who they're so busy, it's very difficult for them to relax and unwind. And sometimes that's just letting off a bit of steam.
Right.
And somebody needs to do that. And then we try and help people to go, oh, there's a lot going on, and I wonder what else is there, when we come here. And
what kind of questions do you ask? Can you give some examples?
Of questions I might ask?
Yeah. What are the kind of things you say during this bodywork, just to paint a bit more of a picture for people?
Well, sometimes when emotions are coming up for people, they start swallowing, or they get tight around their lips, and you can literally see it's almost like something wants to be spoken, but they're censoring themselves. Mm-hmm. And often we have learned to censor ourselves because it hasn't necessarily been safe to say what we're feeling or what we're thinking. And by that, I mean, somebody could withhold their love from us. We might be shamed. We might feel stupid. We might think, is it okay if I say this? What will the other person think of me? So I might just say, if I notice that, it's almost as though your body wants to say something. And then the person might let themselves feel that. And then they might connect, and they might say, yeah, actually, I'm thinking I've really had enough of whatever it is. But they kind of wouldn't let themselves almost acknowledge that. Uh-huh. So it's not like a kind of a mental thought. It's more like a deep feeling, connecting with what the feelings are there. So that's one example.
I find that a sort of gentle walking alongside with me kind of quality to it. And it's interesting because I sometimes like the really, deep elbows in the back body work. And this is the opposite of that. It's very much on the gentle side, and it's not like, walking, holding my hand almost through the sort of different feelings that come up, and kind of space to feel is often how it is for me.
Yeah. I really think so. I really think, and I mean, I remember when I went to my first Rosen workshops, occasionally I'd get really frustrated because I found them slow. Mm. And I realized I was very uncomfortable in silence. I would start to get anxious, and I would kind of think, come on, or whatever it was. Or I would say something. I hated these kind of pauses in the silence. But now I've learned to really enjoy them. To really enjoy them. And again, it's so nice when we do the sharing that we do in Rosen, that you feel in, and even when somebody's stopped speaking, it's almost like the ripples of what they've said. You can feel, you can feel in your body, and you feel them when it's ready to move on. So again, I think it's this lovely kind of dance between the inner and the outer being kind of what we say, what we show, and the inner, what we feel. And Marion always said that she wanted there to be this kind of harmony between our inner and our outer, so that they're just a natural reflection of each other. And I think that's one of the lovely things, is that we can follow our outside, if you like. We can follow our muscle tension. We can follow our breath, and that takes us inside. And then when we really connect with what's inside, that's reflected in the way our body responds and our breath responds. So it's this lovely kind of listening to the different parts of us.
It's interesting to talk about that, being okay with silence. Like, that's definitely something I've grown into. The place where I saw that the least was in Northern Ireland. So I was around Northern Ireland yoga teachers, 100 of them, and I'd never seen such a chatty bunch. And I remember getting a lift in with one of the teachers quite early in the morning. We had a little drive from where I was staying, and I said, can we just be quiet for a little bit? Is that all right? and the teacher managed like 3 minutes. I can see they were getting more and more agitated. It seemed to me almost like a pattern of dispelling tension or self-regulating. It's very, my family are Irish, and I've seen it in Southern Ireland, in Northern Ireland, where there's even more trauma. I think it was even more so. And I remember that sort of deep discomfort with the quiet. And I think something's lost in that, isn't it? Because if when we have conversations, we can allow pauses, you feel vibrations or a deeper landing of something or a chewing on something in those quiet moments between the next thing, the next thing, the next thing.
Yeah, and even just having the time to really, I use the metaphor of being in our own home and starting to notice what's in our own home. When we're busy, we don't have time to really notice things. And I think when we slow right down, we have the time to notice. And I think it's really beautiful. It's really nurturing to have that time to slow down. And now I can't remember again what I was going to say.
That's okay. What kind of things do you help people with? So let's look at it that way. Just another way into this. So, I really come relaxation, a little bit of personal growth, a little bit of sort of, I'd call it like the lower edges of trauma work for me. It's like, I've had traumatic background, but I've pretty dealt with it pretty well. But there's residue, there's little layers of hyperarousal that are, still in the body in a subtle way that I find helpful. Sometimes just sort of well-being and relaxation, self-exploration. For me, I'm like, okay, that's interesting. The body's holding something here that I wasn't quite, it was a bit below the level of my conscious awareness. I needed another person to help me through and guide me into sort of being aware of that.
Break from the interview to tell you about our shop and a deal we've got on there, and also about some events that are coming up. So if you go to Embodied Facilitator /shop and use the code podcast 50 is the code, you can get 50% off anything in the shop. And what have we got on there? How to design training, trauma for facilitators, breath work, leadership, resilience, life purpose. There's a bunch of books, there's a bunch of e-courses, mostly for facilitators, trainers, coaches, yogis, different ebooks. But that code will give you 50% off anything at all there in the shop. So that could save you, let's say, up to £100, which is about $120. So well worth having that code. Go to embodiedfacilitator.com/shop. Also on that website, you will see embodiedfacilitator.com/events-calendar. Just look under events under the main title. You'll see all the stuff we've got coming up for events. We regularly have free online events. If you're interested in embodiment, we have them on coaching, life purpose, marketing, all trauma, all sorts of things. So have a look at the events page. You can see the different one-day events we've got coming up related to the conference and all kinds of other stuff. Okay, so all of that is on embodiedfacilitator.com. And remember that code there. That code is podcast50 if you want 50% off anything. There you go. A good deal. Back to the interview.
Yeah, I mean, is that typical, or is there kind of other things people often come for?
No, I think that's fairly typical, and for me, that's the really beautiful thing about Rosen Method as well, is that you're developing this intimate relationship with yourself, but it's through the touch of somebody else that you really feel yourself more. And I think for me, that's very symbolic. We can do it on our own, and there are things, we can touch and connect with ourselves. But when we're with somebody else, we can feel ourselves more. So it's something we give to each other. Also, me as the practitioner, I can feel myself more, when I'm working.
Uh-huh.
It's opening up the field, if you like, for me to feel and to experience and to sense things. So people come for all different reasons. I mean, sometimes people come if they've read the books that Marion Rosen wrote. There's a lot. The founder. There's a lot of very incredible stories about people who went to her and who were going to have a hip operation, and then they went to have the session with her, and the lady came out swirling her walking stick, or people that couldn't conceive, people that had migraines. I mean, there was a lot of people that had specific things that hadn't responded to treatment and that there was no real reason for. And then they would try something different. They'd heard about it and they'd heard about, these different results. So sometimes people come, because they've got lower back pain, migraines, they're anxious, they can't sleep. And sometimes people come because, they know there's something more. They just have a hunch. Oh, I think there's something more. And so that's why they come, because it's like a journey. Have you ever done diving, Mark?
A little bit, not much.
Yeah. Well, divers often say when they talk about going under the ocean, that it's this different world. And I feel like when you go into yourself in this way, it's like a different world. When you're connecting with people. So it's endless. There's no end to it. We are infinite. We're not products that have come off a factory line and that's the end of it. Every single day we're evolving, we're growing, we're
there's a conversation. I often have this sense that it's something a little too painful for me to go on my own, so I tend to distract myself or ignore it, but I know it's there. And just having another human being there with a sort of kind intent who's going to keep pointing me back to presence gives me the courage, resource, whatever you want to say, just to go that little bit deeper than I would.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay, I knew that was kind of there. And I've been kind of avoiding it. And that avoidance has started to come out in some funny ways or leading to some funny, less useful behaviors. And okay, let's go there. And then you go, oh, that's not so bad. Okay, that's all right. And then it feels like I'm a layer deeper into myself often.
And normally when we actually go there, what is it they say? What you avoid, resist, persists. But normally when we actually go there, it isn't so bad.
Yeah, right.
And then we can let go, because a lot of tension often is people holding things in.
Yeah.
They're holding things down. And so quite a lot of people come and they're scared that they're going to completely lose it. They're scared that if they start crying,
they're
going to be carted away.
Yeah.
It's like this feeling of a dam that has built up and I can't just but that doesn't happen.
Right. The crazy people are the ones who don't go there. That's how to get a recipe for being crazy. The people that do go there, as you say, it's not like they completely collapse and their life falls apart, and it just doesn't happen, does it?
Normally people feel relieved and they feel fresh because they've been stuck. It keeps you stuck in so many ways. And then when you've basically all you're doing is you're feeling your feelings safely. And as you say, because there's somebody there. And we're not encouraging people to have a big cathartic experience. We're not pushing it. We're not kind of fanning the flames we're really just kind of making a space for what is there just to be felt. Without adding anything to it or pushing. Mm-hmm. And so with some people, they might, really hold things in, and it might take a while for them to build up the trust.
Yeah, I remember for me, it took me a few sessions till I really wanted to talk much, because I was like, I don't really know you yet, and that was fine. It was still restful and pleasant. And also, it doesn't have that big catharsis, so there isn't a big come down from it. Like, by the time, it takes me about half an hour to walk back to my office from your session, from your place. And by the time I've got home, I'm energized, I'm relaxed, I'm ready to go back to work. I'm fine. Mm-hmm. It's not like I've had a big emotional breakdown and then I'm screwed for the rest of the day. There's some therapies I would never book in at lunchtime.
Yeah. And I also think sometimes where I used to work, I used to look out of the window when people left, just to see that they would be going the right direction. And so often they would turn in the opposite direction because they were disorientated.
Okay.
Because they'd kind of relaxed to that degree. And so sometimes we say to people, if they're driving, is perhaps sit in a cafe and have a cup of tea, because people also have lots of amazing insights. If you keep a journal, that can be a very creative time where you have a lot of insights about what's going on and you want to kind of write it down. So everyone's different, and it's different every time. And I've had sessions that have been where I might have got in contact with something extremely painful from the past that I'd kind of thought, oh, that's done and dusted, And I get in touch with it. And then, as I say, exactly like you, but often it's just this beautiful connection with a very deep part of us that often we just don't have the time to be with that. And that is a resource. I think it can give us so much, it can infuse every other kind of level of your being. And it's just like checking in with yourself, just that slowing down, just checking in. I think of it as like preventative healthcare, in the sense that there can be things that we're ignoring all the time, but when you slow down in that way, and it's very simple, you get to feel with and be and think, actually, yes, that is something that's still there, and I want to look at it, or I want to feel it, and then it's not normally a big deal, like you're saying, it's just natural. I think it's just like a natural skill or contact that we've forgotten.
It's a sort of digestion process that it's almost like we need another person just to help us with this very natural, normal digestion.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see people just sitting on a park bench and you can see they're going, there's something they're digesting. And if we get our phones out, if we do something, then it stops that happening, that sort of feeling and being with. I've noticed this amongst older generation. They seem to have more of a capacity just to sort of sit for a while without really doing anything. And I'll say, I say, my dad, what do you think about it? Oh, nothing really. You just see this, just the cogs are turning, things are mulling. There's a sort of being with there. And I think that has been lost by a few of us. And, back to our starting conversation with this pause we're being forced into as a society, maybe there's a sort of a communal gestalt happening where we have to kind of reconnect with ourselves a little bit and the people who are physically closest to us and our environments that we're actually in. I wonder how much more I'm going to care for this park I walk around every day by the time this is over. How much closer me and my wife will be, hopefully. There's something in that, actually. I'm sure my house is going to be in a better state. There's going to be less junk around. There's going to be, like some different design, maybe. Okay, let's make this a nice place to live, And
I also think, we've got into the habit that people exhaust themselves and then go away for a holiday and crash out, and then come back and exhaust themselves, go away for a holiday.
Exactly.
And actually, it's so nice just to enjoy being rather than having to achieve. And there's nothing wrong with achieving, that's great fun too. But I do think when we are seeing, society, how it is at the moment and what's happening for people, it's like we want everyone to do well. We want to take care of everyone. I don't want winners and losers. And I hope that we have a kinder society when this is over, and realise the value of things, because, they say there's the price of something and then there's the value of something. And it's like we're really being shown what is the true value of a lot of things that I think we've abused, taken for granted, neglected, got away with. So I do think that this pause, hopefully it's a really wonderful opportunity for everyone personally and a society.
Yes, absolutely. And I hope it's not too rough on people like yourself who are body workers. There's very few actors, I imagine, working right now, very few body workers. A lot of the yoga teachers have moved online. We had a few thousand of them on some phone calls to help them do that recently. And but the body workers can't move online. So it's like, how is that impacting people?
Well, I suppose it's a shock for people, if they can't work. It's all happened very quickly. And listening to the government, they are putting things in place for the self-employed as well as employees. So hopefully that will kick in. Who knows? We're doing this talk today. Who knows what will happen? But that's what I've heard is going to happen. And, there's all different things in like mortgage holidays and various things like this. And I think that's the other thing that's interesting, is seeing that the big brother, for want of a better word, the government, actually, rather than being rigid in the way that you might have thought, it's encouraging institutions to be flexible. to move.
I'm quite impressed by what I've seen. I thought, oh God, Tory government, Conservative government, we're fucked, and I thought a lot of people are really going to suffer here. But actually, from what I've seen so far, and who knows, fingers crossed, right? I mean, it seems like a relatively intelligent and flexible response.
Yeah, and I really hope as well. I mean, we think of all these people now that are the key workers, and many people doing jobs which haven't been valued, because you look at how we pay people in society. Certain jobs get this enormous amount of money and other jobs get little. And these are the people that we're depending on, a lot now. So I hope we reevaluate how we financially recompense people for their work and their time and their effort, so it becomes more equal, so that there isn't these disparities, because we're all so grateful to the people that are going out there helping us to live. And
yeah. I mean, the guy plumber came to my house the other day just before lockdown, and I was thinking, God, this guy's a legend. I was like, anything you need, mate. And then people will be valuing teachers in a very different way when they realize that the teachers are giving them their children educational day after a bit of homeschooling for a few weeks. I think they'll look at teachers quite different. And obviously doctors and nurses right now are the absolutely the heroes of the country, and it's.
We've been running online things for within our community. So we've been having, and we've been talking about this because, of course, Rosen Method is characterized by touch. You come and you lie down and you are touched. But there's lots of other elements that go with that, like the way that we listen in, the way that we ask questions, the way that we sense things, the way we can see with the body language. So within our community, we've been having a lot of online things. And with our students, we're having online courses where they're going to take it in turns, one to lie on a massage table, because we do body readings. And then people can talk about what they see. We'll angle the camera and see how that changes. Because also, again, when somebody's very present with you and they're really, we're having a kind of a head talk now. We are not tuned in the way that we would be in a session. But when you're tuned in to somebody else, you can feel so much happening in the other person. It's like you get a little wave of it, and you can say something. I just wonder what happened just there, or you really took a big breath when you said that, or something changed. So we can practice a lot of the skills that we use when we give a session in that way. And I think everybody's going to be desperate to touch.
Well, this is the other thing. I think we're going to learn the value of touch.
The value of touch.
You guys might going to be losing some money now, but in a few months, you might be the most in-demand people ever.
I hope so. I think people are missing that touch. It's lovely to connect in all these ways. It's amazing. And wouldn't it be nice to hold the hand of somebody that you care for? We see some of the lonely people, or I have a neighbour. I'd love to hold her hand.
Yeah. I wonder if imagine if people have a kind of certificate that says, okay, I'm not infected and I can hug anyone, and it lasts a day or something, something like that. And imagine how valuable those people would be. Imagine how on demand those people would be. It's even just to be hugged. I really fear for some of the people who are living. I spoke to a friend who's living on their own today, and I realized, I was very grateful that I live with someone and I have touch every day, where she's really, you can see, she's itching. She's bouncing off the walls a little bit without that human contact, just in her own home. And she's safe from the virus, but she's really suffering.
Well, she can tune in with herself, and I think that's we have so much in us. I think when you really tune into yourself, you can also feel connected to others. So that's something that I think people can do.
Okay. So we talk about the kind of wisdom of the body and the body knowing things. It's kind of a bit of a cliche. Do you want to kind of open that out a little bit? This is kind of your very much a Rosen Method kind of thing.
Well, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about when I receive a session myself, and I come into contact with myself and a part of myself in a different way than I do through anything else. And I get in contact, it feels to me, with this reservoir of insight, love, acceptance, whatever it is. So that's through the body, but I who knows what it is we're connecting with and how you would define the mind ends here and the body starts there. So I think it's like we're connecting with something very deep within ourselves through the body.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to say about Rosen? What's that? Anything else you'd like to say about Rosen before we move towards wrap up?
Well, one of the things that has been lovely in a lot of our recent courses is how many men have been coming.
Okay.
And I don't know what it's like on the courses that you do, but certain courses that I've been to, there's a lot of women, you know, and often there might be
70 to 90% most of it internationally, yeah.
And I've always really wanted to, I've really wanted more men to come, because I think we so benefit when there are men in the group. And it's exciting to me that more men are coming and really, you know, enjoying it. And I say to them sometimes, you know, what's it like when there's just one or two men? And that's all right. But I think it's lovely when there are more men. We all benefit. So yes, that's something I'd really like to see. I think I actually did teach with my colleague Ingrid Maria. We were invited to teach a men's group in Northern Ireland some years ago. And that was a real kind of honor to be welcomed into that circle of these men, and it was lovely. So it was great. But I like it when there's men and women. I think it's a very nice balance.
Yeah, I agree. Why do you think you get more men then? Because it's quite a gentle method. Often we see in embodiment practices, it tends to be the more athletic, sort of intense methods that actually get more men, you know? So I'm kind of surprised by that.
I think it's men who are interested in, again, there's something more. It's not about the body being a tool or a weapon or a symbol of masculinity or health or whatever. It's more interested in what's really within me as a person. And of course, people have issues with touch. I mean, men have been abused as well as women have been abused, or perhaps there's been a bit of a fear around touch for a lot of people. How will my touch be received, you know, for both men and women? So again, having this very safe environment in the way that we practice, and which is, you know, starting slowly and then doing things, what have you. It's again, not, I think we often see touch in a sexualized way. And in Rosen, the touch is nothing to do with sexuality. Of course, we have our sexuality and our sensuality. That's wonderful. And I actually think doing Rosen benefits your sexuality and your sensuality. But our way of touching is not with that in mind. It's really about seeing the person, as I was saying, the being, the inner being. So I think that's appealing to more men. You know, and in terms of benefiting relationships, when you learn to really be able to listen to another person or your partner, and also you can really feel them. So normally we say to people, obviously, you know, if you were going to be a practitioner, don't work on your partner, for example, because it's like a psychotherapist seeing their husband or wife as their client. But when you're practicing, it's absolutely amazing. Somebody that you thought that you knew so well, you experience in a completely different way. And it's a very loving way. It's a kind of unconditional positive regard for that person, I would say. So again, I think more people are becoming interested in that. So I hope that trend continues. I'd like it to.
Nice to hear that. I'm getting the sense that sort of men are back a little bit with this virus as well. It's interesting. Some of the sort of masculine traits seem to be back in fashion in some funny ways. And I'm seeing a sort of turn. It's interesting, since Harvey Weinstein got prosecuted, it was almost like not the end, but a different chapter of a certain healing and a bit more space for the positive side, the healthy side of men to be seen, I think. So I'm looking.
Also, you know, I've had male Rosen practitioners, for example, work on me. And it was so lovely as a woman to have the lovely nurturing touch of Rosen from a man. You know, it's lovely. So I think the quality of the touch is a nurturing touch, and both men and women can have that. And depending on what your relationship is with, you know, the men in your life, of course, we all project a little bit onto our practitioners possibly. But I know for me, I found it really wonderful. My practitioner was male, and I really valued that safe touch that he gave me, and the way that he worked with me, and like other male teachers. So I think it can be a lovely thing. Yeah.
Thank you, Annabelle. So it's time to wrap up. Where do people find you online?
We're rosenmethod.co.uk.
Great. Okay.
They can also look at the roseninstitute.net, I think it is, and that's got lots of resources. That's an international organisation, and they have webinars, and they have a journal which has got loads of really interesting articles to do with Rosen. So I hope I've said that right. It's either I think it's roseninstitute.net, yes.
People can
anyway, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I'm missing our sessions. I'm sad. I'm okay. Yeah. I've had a bit of a dip again. I was up ill and then better, and then I think I worked a bit too hard, and I'm being forced into this pause. So,
yeah. Enjoy it. Enjoy it.
And a closing message about the body?
Well, the body is a miracle. You know, the body really is a miracle. And I think when you touch, we do this exercise in Rosen to do with the breath. It moves me every time to feel the life of, you know, how life is lived through us. And so I think that our bodies can continually inspire us. So I think just, you know, really the body is a miracle, and it's yours.
Annabelle, thank you for joining us today. Some ways to get more, to give back, and to get more involved now. So the biggest request I have would be to share the podcast with your friends, people that you think would really enjoy it. Email it to them, put it on your social media, tell them about it, old school. Really appreciate that. Equally, if you want to support us financially, you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/Embodiment Podcast and give us $1 an episode. And I'd say they're well worth $1. So that's less than £1 if you're in UK-ish. So yeah, please go there. On the embodiedfacilitator.com website is where this is hosted. Most people I think listen to for iTunes. iTunes, we'd certainly appreciate a review. The way iTunes works means that a review means more people will find it. iTunes regards it as more important for searches. So even a couple of sentences review really does help as a little thank you to us. And if you want to go to embodiedfacilitator.com, you can see the actual, links to the sites. There's comments on there. The Facebook group tends to be where people discuss things. So if you go to put in the Embodiment Podcast into Facebook, there's a page which is relatively quiet and a group which does have some discussion on. So I will reply to things personally there. So also on the embodiedfacilitator.com website, there's all sorts of freebies there. There's videos, there's free ebooks, there's ebooks you can buy. And of course, there's our newsletter list. If you want to stay in touch and learn about things like the Embodied Facilitator Course and our next Embodied Yoga Principles teacher training, then go to that website and you'll see a little pop-up and you can get the newsletter through there. Okay, so I think they're the main ones. Tell your friends, pay us some money on Patreon, give us a review on iTunes, send us your email if you want to be on the newsletter list, and get involved on the Facebook there. Bit long. Pick whatever you like that works for you.